So not a ton to talk about today because we're all waiting for the ETS to drop. So, but let me start with this. There is something interesting that the EEOC has done in the last week or so. They updated their technical assistance guide with regard to religious exemption requests. So something good. We'll put a link in the email that goes out after this. That will give you the form the EEOC is recommending you use. Of course, we could have used that form a couple of months ago, but I think helpful information there. So I have sort of four takeaways from my review of the document. The first one is that, how does the employer get put on notice of a need for a religious accommodation? The EEOC confirms that the employee or the applicant has to tell you, right? But they don't have to use any special words, any magic words. I'm requesting a religious exemption. They just have to say, I'm not getting vaccinated because of my religion or because of something. And then now you as the employer are put on notice. It's very similar to when the employee requests some sort of a disability accommodation or even FMLA leave. There's no magic words. The employer just has to have enough information to know that that's what the employee is talking about. And then sort of the next issue, and we're getting this question a ton on Hotline, this idea of assessing the religiousness and sincerity. EEOC is saying you kind of should assume that the request for religious accommodation is based on a sincerely held religious belief. I don't think it's a winner to challenge the sincerity of someone's religious belief. And I understand a lot of people are getting religion right now, but I don't think that that's the winner way to go. I think there is another way to challenge this stuff and to say, no, we can't accommodate that. If you have a truly objective basis for questioning the belief, then the EEOC says you would be justified for making a limited factual inquiry and seeking additional supporting information. Usually that's in the form of a statement by the employee. I have seen some employers go farther, get a letter from a religious leader, for example, but again, that might be going farther than you want to go in this instance. I've also seen some employers want to ask questions like, have you gotten any other vaccines, things like that. Again, I don't think you should be making inquiries like that unless you're talking to an employment attorney and you're making the decision, weighing the risks of making inquiries like that. So a couple of other points from the EEOC's document. The idea of considering alternative arrangements. As the EEOC is saying, it might be possible to accommodate an unvaccinated employee seeking reasonable accommodation without imposing an undue hardship other ways, right? You might still be able to have them in the workplace, but you've got to be thinking about it. You've got to think about telework. Reassignment to a vacant position can always be a reasonable accommodation. So let's say you have an employee who normally works every day in the office, but they're actually qualified to do a position that's 100% remote. Maybe that's a reasonable accommodation. So think about that. And then, of course, when you think about undue hardship, it's a very individualized assessment. The employer needs to demonstrate how much the cost or disruption of the accommodation would be to the business. And things to think about are, does the employee work indoors or outdoors? Because we know lower spread outdoors. Does the employee work alone or with others? Does the employee telecommute? Does the employee work alone in an office? Do they work in a huge warehouse where they're in one corner of the warehouse and they hardly ever come in contact with other people? Do they work with the public? Things like that. And I thought this was interesting. Also relevant, the EEOC says, is how many employees are seeking a similar accommodation and that cumulative cost or burden. Normally, when we talk about undue hardship, we don't usually take into account the fact that there might be other employees who are on leave, for example. But the EEOC is saying, yeah, in this case, we might have a bunch of employees seeking an accommodation. So we can talk about the cumulative effect. If you have, 10 employees who work in a department and 5 of them want this religious accommodation of not getting vaccinated, that might change the equation rather than if you just have one. So, and again, like I said, in the email that goes out after the town hall, we will give you a link to the form that the EEOC is recommending that you use for religious accommodation. And I say, if the EEOC recommends a form, use their form, get you in less trouble. All right, wouldn't be a town hall if I didn't talk about carrots and sticks. So we all know we're waiting for the ETS to drop. Yesterday, an OSHA spokesperson, a DOL spokesperson said that will be coming in the coming days. Now, I highly doubt that drops on election day. This doesn't seem like that's something the administration would do. My vote is for tomorrow, or my guess is for tomorrow, but who knows? I definitely think it's coming this week. My guess, like I said, is for tomorrow. So stay tuned. And if and when it does drop, depending on the kind of information there, we may go ahead and schedule a special session, a special webinar. So just sort of stay tuned on that and look for our notices on that. Couple of interesting things that we're hearing, though. One is that the report is that employers will be able to require employees to pay for testing. I've been asking for weeks, if not months, who pays for the testing. So what we're hearing is that we're going to be able to get employees to pay for the testing. Interestingly, though, there are some states that have laws about employees paying for medical testing. Pennsylvania is one of them. So I don't know how that's going to work exactly. So stay tuned on that. And then what the DOL is saying, and this is a quote, covered employers must develop, implement, and enforce a mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy unless they adopt a policy requiring employees to choose either to get vaccinated or to undergo regular COVID testing and wear a face covering at work. So that's for the larger than 100 employers situation. And that's what we're hearing so far. So stay tuned on that. With regard to the federal contractor piece, I have heard that, and you probably saw this in the news as well, about 10 states have sued the federal government over the federal contractor requirements. So again, stay tuned on that. And then we talked about this last week, but I think it's worth mentioning with all the talk of boosters right now. This is what's available right now for boosters. If you had the Pfizer or the Moderna, the following groups are eligible for their booster shot 6 months or more after their initial series. So that's anyone 65 and older, 18 plus living in long-term care, 18 plus with certain underlying medical conditions, 18 plus who work or live in high-risk settings. Those underlying medical conditions apparently are a lot. And so I've read that up to 90% of the 18 and over population may be eligible for boosters right now. For the nearly 15 million people who got the J&J shot, boosters are also now being recommended for that. But the definition of fully vaccinated from the CDC still is a single J&J shot, 2 Moderna or 2 Pfizer. You want to be careful as an employer about starting to ask about boosters and making boosters mandatory. It's one thing if you have an employee who's over 65, you have access to those records, obviously in HR, you know how old your employees are, but we're not really supposed to know unless the employee has told us about underlying medical conditions. So you want to be careful about talking about boosters and trying to mandate boosters, at least right now. So kind of stay tuned on that. All right, so that's really all I have for now, but I see there's a couple of questions that have come in. Oh, so one of them was about boosters, and I did answer that question.
You answered that one already, yeah.
Yeah, can I clarify what I said about PA having a law about employees paying for medical testing will be covered by the federal contractor mandate. We were evaluating using employee paid testing as an accommodation for religious exemptions. All I can tell you is that there is a law on the books in Pennsylvania, and I can try to find that link and maybe send it out in the email as well, that prohibits employers from requiring employees to pay for medical testing. How it plays out in this area, hard to say. And as with everything else, I think there's going to be litigation, and that may be where some of the litigation comes from in Pennsylvania.
I think that was it.
Like I said, kind of a quiet week, but that ETS is getting ready to drop, I think.
Very good. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us today. And we did get a lot of comments about having Sherry back, so I will twist her arm and try to do that. Sherry, thank you again. And Amy, as always, thank you. And like I said, keep your eyes out if we do see OSHA come up, or tomorrow, or we'll try to put something on quicker than next Tuesday. So we'll see how many pages Amy will have to read. All right, everyone, have a great day.